So I've just been on Facebook Marketplace, and it's a sort of a site I visit quite regularly, just looking for golf stuff and any bargains I can find really, and I've stumbled across something which sort of took my interest. So Rich Woods is the seller. You may recognise him. He's been on James Wilkshire's channel. I think he's got a channel of his own as well. He's also been on Steve Buzzard's channel. He's based at Dainton, which is sort of 10 to 12 miles away. So we're going to head over there tomorrow and buy the clubs. So Orca is basically, for those that don't know, is the last British made or British based manufacturer of golf clubs. So it's a family run business. I follow Alex on Instagram, I think, and Twitter. I know they've got some sort of connection to Big Oggie's channel. I think John and Neil both use the clubs, and also Lee Whitaker has in the past as well. So it's a make I know a little bit about, not a lot, but a little bit about. So I know they're good quality clubs, so it'd be good to try and refurbish a set and either play the clubs, which I will compare against my Cobras at the moment in the studio setting and also on the golf course, which will be a future video. If not, we'll sell them on and someone else can have the set of Orcas that I'm going to refurbish. So the idea is get the clubs, see what condition they're in, and take it from there. First stop is to go and get some money. Just pulled up at the local Sainsbury's. Going to grab some money before heading over to Dainton. It's about a 25 minute trip over there. Let's hope we've got some money in the account. Might be longer than 20-25 minutes. Summer traffic in Torbay, bit of a nightmare. So just arrived at Dainton, armed with the money. Let's go exchange the money for some clubs and see what we're dealing with. So I've just picked the clubs up. They look decent enough. I'm going to have a proper good inspection when we get back, and then look at ways that we can turn these clubs back into something which I think will be a little bit special. Through there. Should we have a go? Is it a lie? Is the road closed? The traffic is just as bad coming home as it was actually getting to Dainton, unfortunately, but we're still battling. The cleaner's here. All right.
Very fresh clean. Hello guys.
So I've just got the clubs back. I'm just going to have a little bit of an inspection of them. So the actual irons are in quite good, headwise in good condition. There's a little bit of rust on the back of them. It's only a small amount of pittering. It's not ingrained into the actual club head. So I'm pretty confident I can clean that up quite nicely. The faces and the grooves are fine. Again, a little bit of rust there towards the heel. This one's sort of typical of it. It's a wedge. You normally see the most damage, or you can tell a condition of a golf club by really grabbing the wedges, because they tend to be used the most, or a 7-iron that people practice with. But it's in pretty good nick for a forged club that's sort of 2-3 years old. Quite happy with that. But the main issue, as you can see here, is the shafts are very pitted. Every single club in the set is like that. It might just be on the outside because it is a painted steel. It's not your traditional looking steel. It almost looks a little bit like a grey graphite shaft. The grips that are fitted are the lambkin full cord. There is a bit of life left in them, to be honest. They're probably usable, but it's not a grip I particularly like. It's quite harsh on the hands, especially if you're playing and practicing a lot. So I will be removing them. I probably won't save them, to be honest. Some of the cord is starting to sort of become a bit detached and a little bit dirty, so I'll probably just cut them off and regrip. So overall, I'm really happy with what we've bought here. Again, I just said we're just going to use the head, so we're going to disregard the shafts. I will use the shafts probably for doing some extensions in the future, so we will get a little bit of money back off them and they will be used and recycled. But now we're going to go and take the shafts out of the actual club heads, and then we're going to sort the club heads out and clean them up. Can you stick that on my account, please, Vic?
Of course, Mr. Barnes.
Don't take the mic. So we're back now in my workshop, and we're actually going to now remove the club heads from the shafts. If you haven't seen the video of me reshafting some golf clubs, then go on the channel and check that video out. Just applying some heat to the club head. That should then loosen the glue up and almost burn the glue out, and then we can just twist the club head off the shaft. We need this 3 or 4 minutes. Should now be able to twist the club head off the shaft. I'm using a towel because the club head will obviously conduct the heat that I've just used, and there you go, that's the head removed from the shaft. I'm not looking to save the ferrules. There's a little bit of damage on a few of them, so I'm going to replace all the ferrules as well. So I bought a small pack of iron ferrules, the 12mm ones. I've just measured them against the actual club head, and they fit quite nicely without having to do much work, and they also go on the shafts at the bottom relatively easy. I might have to grease them up slightly just to get them over and down the shaft, but that is what I'm going to use, and you can buy them. I think they're sort of £3–4 for 12, but it's nice to have some new ferrules in your clubs. So the next stage, I'm just going to rough up the actual tip of the shaft, which will go into the club head. It just helps for the glue to stick a little bit better. So I'm just roughing up that surface just with the edge of the file and just making it less smooth. That will just help the glue to set. And then what I'm going to do is, after I've roughed it up, I'm just going to push the ferrule over the top, screw it on slightly. You can see it only goes on a certain amount, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually hit it against the ground and push it further up. So I'm just going to drive the shaft down into the ground like so. So now we've actually got it a slight sort of bit of shaft coming through the ferrule. And what I can do now is I'll get the actual club head, I'll pop it on, and what I'll do is I'll drive the club head down into the ground with the shaft, and that should push the ferrule right the way down. As so, there you go, look. And that way is an easy way to drive the ferrule into place. So that's one of the shafts prepped. I'm now going to do the other remaining shafts exactly the same way. For me personally, I'd rather that the actual ferrules were a little bit tight and had to be slightly stretched as they're pushed down. That just means for me that that is not going to move, that's not coming off, that is nicely secured in place. You see on some clubs, especially older clubs, over the years the ferrules will move around. That is not moving anywhere, that is solid. I can't even pull that off. The only way I'd get that off really is squeezing it in the vise. So for me that's a better fit than having a loose ferrule. It also marries up quite nicely, and there's no sort of edge at all. It's a nice flat surface from the actual ferrule into the club head, which again is ideally what you want. One thing I sort of failed to mention when I was doing a Reshaft video was, if you've still got a grip on a club, you've basically got a bit of an air pocket if you don't clear out this point here. So you normally get glue in here, but if that has got any substance in there and it's blocking it, all it will do is act as an air trap, and when you pop the club on, what will happen is it will try and push its way off. And you see that's quite a common fault that people make, is they don't clean out properly the actual end of the shaft, particularly when you've got a grip on. So that's all the ferrules onto the shafts, and also the bottom of the shafts and tips. You probably see a difference in colour between the actual shaft and what goes inside the club head. They're all ready to go. The next stage is now to glue the actual club head onto the shafts. But guess what? I've actually not got any glue left, so I'm going to have to make a quick journey to the local shops to pick up some irodite. What a nightmare. So to get rid of the rust, I'm just going to stick all the club heads in a bucket. Then the coke we purchased earlier from Vicky in the pro shop, we're going to actually put the club heads in the coke overnight. I remember in the past actually pouring coke over a 2p piece, and it basically just cleans them up. I mean, imagine what that does to your insides, but that will hopefully take the rust, well, not hopefully, it will take the rust off the clubs. Just disposing of the coke. Stuck the clubs in a plastic bag. Right, we're off now to go buy some glue and go and get rid of this rust. Brilliant. So I'm just going to show you what I've done. So I soaked it overnight in some coke, which helped to sort of loosen any rust that was sort of sticking to the head. All I'm doing is literally just rubbing a little bit of very, very fine sandpaper on the back of the club, so it's not doing any damage, and all it's really doing is just removing some of that rust. If you use too sort of abrasive sandpaper, you will mark up the actual head and leave scratches, which is again not ideal. But I will, when I finish these clubs off, I will polish anything out of that as well, so it should come up even better. But yeah, just rubbing it, very fine sandpaper, which is just removing a bit of extra rust off the club. There you go, that's quite a good comparison. You can see the bottom iron, which is the 9 iron, with quite a lot of rust, and then the 6 iron, which I've just done, looks so much better. It doesn't look new, obviously, because it is a 3-year-old golf club, but there's literally minimal rust on the top one, lots of rust on the bottom one. Pretty pleased with that finish. So what we're going to do now is we're actually just going to fit the club heads to the shaft. You'll notice when I pop that on there that it's quite loose, so that's, you know, it would stick if you use a lot of glue, maybe mix the glue with, say, sand or a bit of wood chip, but for me that's not a good enough fit. You can either put a couple of little hole punches into the actual bottom of the shaft here inside the club head, which will just change the actual shape of the sort of bottom inch and a half which goes into the club head. But a quicker way and easier way is by using the vise. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten the vise slightly, not over tight. You will crack the shaft if you're not careful, but I'm just going to pop it in there, tighten it slightly. It will just change the actual shape of the actual bottom of the shaft, and then when I put the head on, you'll notice how that's a tighter fit. It's going to stick better for me, and it's going to stay in there. That will also be beneficial when I glue the club, because when I set it and put it up in an upright position to stay in position, I know that will hold in place. If it's too loose, the shaft may slip and turn during the night and set in the wrong position, which would be then meaning we'd have to take the club head off and repeat the process, which we don't want to be doing. So I'm just mixing the irodite up now, the two different parts. We'll grab a tea or a little mixer like that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pop that onto the bottom of the shaft in here like that, making sure it, use it generously. You will get some glue left over, and I'm just going to pop a little bit now into the head as well, and then we're just going to clean up this glue. We can reuse this glue as well if we're careful enough. Glue's gone up in price quite a bit actually, I've just noticed today. There you go, and then I'm just going to clean the club head up as well. Just a little bit of white spirit on a cloth, and then just wipe it round the club head and around the ferrule. It's easier to clean it up now rather than after. There you go, so that's in place. So I've just lined up the grip with the leading edge and made sure that's nice and straight. Push the shaft down to make sure it's fully into the actual club head, and now I'm just going to pop it into an upright position and let it dry for sort of 8 to 10 hours. If anybody was wondering, the shaft I'm fitting is a KBS stiff 120 grams, so it's exactly the same as what's in my Cobra. So I will do a comparison video when I make the final decision of whether I put the Orcas in my bag or stick with my Cobra irons. So I'm just walking back up to the clubhouse. I've got to leave those clubs now for sort of 8 to 10 hours, so I'll leave them overnight and we'll see what they're like in the morning. So I'm back in the workshop at Churston. The clubs have been drying overnight, so the shafts will now be set into the heads. Let's have a little look how they turned out. So I've just checked that all the grips are actually lined up, that I'm happy with the shaft label and the leading edge marrying up nicely, so they look on straight. I've also done another test that I would always do, which I've actually tried to twist the club head and with the grip, just to make sure that that iron is nicely set in place. Sometimes you'll get the odd one that just won't stick for various reasons, so I've just checked that, but they're all nicely in place. I'm confident that the club heads are staying on the shafts. I've also just checked around the ferrules just to make sure again that that's a nice clean finish, which again I'm happy with. Obviously they're my own clubs, so that wouldn't be the greatest concern, but if I'm going to sell these on and not use them, then they need to be, to me, they need to be at a certain standard. I'm happy with that. There's no edges at all on them. They're nicely glued down. They're not moving. I've checked all them and I'm happy with that. So my final check is to actually hit the clubs to make sure the heads and the shafts stay in one. Change the shafts. You'll see now the shafts, although they're not brand new, there's no pittering, there's no rust evident on them. and they're also in the spec that I would actually require to use them. We've got the Golf Pride multi-compound grip on them, which is in the sort of Torque United yellow and blue colours. Not a great season for Torque United, but it's still nice to support your local team. I may change them as well. They're just a standard size grip. We've also got new ferrules on the golf club as well, which are nicely married in. Just finished the clubs off. I could have used the original ferrules, but just felt that that's just an added addition, very cheap to actually change, but makes a huge difference to the overall appearance of the golf clubs. Finally, I've done some work on the club faces. I've done a bit of polishing on them just to remove again a little bit of rust, and also just to shine them up to make them look slightly more attractive at address. I do need to check the spec on these clubs, the correct lofts, make sure the lie angles suit me as well, so that I can actually game these clubs. If I decide that I'm not going to game the clubs, I will just set them back to standard lofts and lies, which should be quite easy given it's a forged head. And there we have it, one refurbished and improved set of golf clubs that should now be worth sort of £300 plus, which I've probably been able to do for around about the £200 mark. But it's nice to actually restore a set of clubs that are now playable, and someone will be proud to have them in their bag.